Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ozark Radio Hour, brought to you by the Eureka Springs Independent and the Inside Straight and Thanatopsis Club. I'm Richard Pille.
And I'm T.Racy Johnson, filling in for Kent Crow, who's down in Madison County this morning, fighting for truth, justice, and the American way. He couldn't be with us. So Richard and I are your hosts for about an hour of purely organic radio, always fresh, always local, and always honest.
Yeah, T.Racy, it is a pleasure to be here with you. Every Ozark Radio Hour is special, but your being here makes it really, really, truly special. However, I don't want you to get off on the wrong foot. Kent Crow is not fighting for truth, justice, and the American way. He's trying to get some ne'er-do-well out of doing time in the slammer.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll make my opinion of his fight for justice upon meeting him appropriately for the first time. I have not.
Okay, just as well. But enough about Kent. It's great to have anyone under 85 years of age here in the studio. Give the folks a little autobiography. Tell them about yourself.
Well, first off, I'd like to say that these two fellows did a really good job tricking me into co-hosting the show this morning, so I'd like to apologize to everybody ahead of time.
There was no skullduggery involved.
A little bit about myself is that usually I'm a behind-the-scenes kind of person, so this is a little bit different for me. But I moved out here, originally from Northern California, which is where I was born. I've had the pleasure of traveling this country extensively and many others. I've found lots of places that I've fallen in love with, and this area of Arkansas truly has elements of all of my favorite parts of every other little town I've been to, and it seems to encompass everything I love in one small area.
A lot of us that have ended up here have come to that same conclusion. It seems to be a magnet for a lot of pretty talented and wonderful people, don't you think?
Well, you know, the saying I've been hearing is if you're meant to be in the area, you'll be here. If not, this area will kick you out. So it's a testament to all of our character that we're still here. Either we're all the same amount of crazy or we're all on some kind of a mission that I haven't figured out yet.
I think maybe it's a little bit of both in most cases. There are certainly a large number of people that every day meet more and more people that are just wonderful folks and drawn here by that mysterious presence that is Northwest Arkansas.
And I've said it before, you never know who you're going to meet. Really
great to have you here and such an improvement over, what's his name? Kent. But I'm going to spoil the moment by bringing in our producer, Dan Croats, and give us a rundown on what's happening on the program today. And Dan, this is going pretty well, so try not to screw things up with it. Okay. Do you know T.Racy?
I thank you. Thanks so much for more of that kindness that you're famous for, Richard.
You've met T.Racy, haven't you?
Yes. To answer your question, I know T.Racy just a little bit. I think she and I were for maybe the third time last night at the Opera in the Ozarks. Was that it? The third time?
That was the third time, I believe.
Well, anyways, we were over in Opera in the Ozarks at Inspiration Point. I want to give a shout out to the folks at the Opera in the Ozarks. They do incredible work. We saw a modern opera called Albert Herring by Benjamin Britten. It was pretty dang good.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah. But anyways, I do know T.Racy just a little bit, and on your recommendation, I hired her to work here at the Ozark Radio Hour. That's why she's got a chauffeur now and rolling in dough. But I want to say I have enjoyed her company a lot more than I've enjoyed your company lately. So thanks so much for bringing her into the family.
It's all right, guys. I'm a middle child. I'm a scapegoat by nature. I'll keep us together.
Well, let me ask you a question, though, T.Racy. You're in love with the Ozarks. Is that right? Love it here?
I think it's pretty safe to say I love it here. I had some friends. Last week's music segment, J.B. Beverly was in town, and we have a friend, Cameron Romero, who is a director and a producer. I was somewhat showing him around Eureka Springs, and I said 3 things about Eureka Springs regarding the supposed crystal under Basin Park, the hidden town below, and something else. But that's all it took before he stopped me and said, "You love it here, don't you?" And I said, "It shows."
Well, let me ask you a question, though. You know, I know you're in love with Eureka Springs, but this is really the first time you've been in Berryville, Arkansas, right?
No, I actually come to Berryville often. I'm not ashamed to say I have to shop at the big corporate store here.
At the evil retail shop.
It is. It's got me by the you-know-what. Some things I do need to go there and buy.
Well, let me tell you that folks in Eureka Springs won't really want me to share this, but if you go to Walmart at about 2 o'clock in the morning, it's full of people from Eureka Springs who are shopping there, and they just don't want anyone to know that they actually crossed the river.
Well, it's like taking you always want to take 2 Mormons fishing with you, because if you take one, he'll drink all your beer.
It's like the band that sings about fighting against a corporation with McDonald's wrappers in their tour van.
Yeah. Here's an interesting bit of history about the Ozark Radio Hour. Now that you bring up McDonald's, we used to have an hour program on a local radio station, but they insisted on having McDonald's as one of our program sponsors. So we refused to continue to participate.
It's what drove us old men to start podcasting. Part of our reason that we started this situation was because we believe in local economies and doing business locally and small economies of scale. And that certainly was not the message that we were getting with McDonald's as a sponsor. So we just turned down money, actually, and came to the internet, struggling as we are with it. And we must be doing better and better because you're here now, Tracy, and Jeremiah Alvarado has come on board, and there is hope, I believe.
Well, maybe we're all still here because we don't partake in the food from these places that are trying to sponsor us. We're preaching permaculture, a healthy community, and healthy living. That would be quite contradictory.
There you go. But now we're sounding a little holier than now.
Well,
should we avoid that?
You know, the reason you're here is to tell us.
And frankly, that's impossible when you're in any room.
To be holier than anything.
That's correct.
We're bringing out the best in Richard this morning.
I'm glad that the aura is finally something you can see. You know, you're supposed to be telling us what's on the show today. So do your job.
All right, I will do that. Jeremiah Alvarado kicks the Eureka Springs City Council in its biggest part.
Well, we know where that is, don't we?
On the third side of the coin, he's taking on the Planning Commission, and that incredible urgency on their part to define what the word taupe means for all time, or something like that. But here's a generational thing. Jeremiah complains about Pokemon players getting no respect, and frankly, I don't know what Pokemon is, Tracy.
It's Pokemon Go.
Pokemon Go.
Which is a new internet game.
How the hell do you know that?
My 10-year-old
quite
grandson.
intrigued as well. I'm just staring at him.
My 10-year-old grandson told me about it.
Okay. All right.
I did not realize this was a big, huge thing until, honestly, I started seeing memes on Facebook making fun of Pokemon, which I am a little too old to have got into it when it first came out. The only thing I know about it is some kind of trading cards. I've actually got some pretty compelling arguments of why some people think this is great. The idea behind this, evidently, is to get people outside and moving around. So, for instance, one friend told me yesterday she has a friend that walked 15 miles in one day trying to find this Pokemon thing. So on that point of the coin, I suppose it is making gamers who are typically lazy become a little bit more active. But are these people really equipped to be walking out in traffic if they've been inside playing games for 15 years?
Well,
is this when the zombie apocalypse starts?
And this is
public safety hazard.
Yeah.
And Jeremiah has much to say about that, and in particular, talking about how doggone dangerous it is to play, what is it,
Pokemon Go.
To play
Thank you,
Pokemon
Richard.
Go in Eureka Springs. So we'll hear more from Jeremiah. And then Sharon Laborde interviews Loretta Crenshaw. Welcome to the conversation. And Loretta took us up on our offer to tell your story and lets us know about her life here in the Ozarks, beginning back in the 70s when just about everybody in Eureka Springs had flowers in their hair and smoked fatties all day long, which, let me assure our listeners, no one does anymore because we've all found church homes and we all have 401k accounts.
And COPD.
Also, anyways, Loretta is also the head librarian at the Eureka Springs Public Library and our Carnegie Library. And so in addition to telling us her story, asked us to read a public library public service announcement, which I'm going to ask T.Racy to do now, because we need to get our money's worth out of her. So will you do that, T.Racy?
If everyone bears with me. Right. There's a magic show and field day at the library. The summer reading program, On Your Mark, Get Set, Read, continues this week with Tommy Terrific's Wacky Magic Show at 3 p.m. on Monday, July 18th. Will young Tommy be able to carry off a magic show if his uncle Fumpernutter doesn't show up? Enjoy popcorn and a movie, Cool Runnings, rated PG at 3 p.m. on Tuesday, July 19th, followed at 7 p.m. by Pajama Story Time for Toddlers. Richard,
Okay.
7 o'clock, that's your slot. On Wednesday, July 20th, plan to come to Preschool Craft and Story Hour at 10:30. Then rest up and come back at 3 p.m. for the Library Field Day, which is when the magic show is going to be. Maybe I'll go at 3 o'clock for the magic show. Thursday, July 21st at 3 is the ever-popular Lego Club with a new weekly building challenge. Keep up your reading and training hours so you can advance all day, all the way to national champion. Well, you get to build Legos and become a national champion? Is that what I'm reading?
That's exactly what you get to read there.
For more information, you all better visit eurekalibrary.org or call 479-253-8754.
And so in addition to Sharon's visit with Loretta Crenshaw, I visit with Ken Trimble, who is the guy who in Eureka Springs and in Carroll County generally is an advocate for bees, and he was the founder of the Eureka Springs Pollinator Alliance.
I don't think in this whole dialogue today much that is more important than trying to figure out how to save our bees and our pollinators. No bees, no food.
That's right.
We have to get the ear of industry and industrial farming and our utility companies. It's so easy for them to go spray glyphosates and other things around, and we are killing ourselves by doing all this. I'm so proud of them for starting a local organization that can bring awareness to our area in particular, and maybe they'll make a difference.
Right.
I hope.
It has to start locally. If you think on too big of a scale, it's overwhelming, then nobody does anything. So we keep it small in our community, little steps at a time. Everybody can handle it. It grows from there.
That's right.
And speaking of locally, did you bring us any music this week?
We have a long show today, so we're going to be listening to one song from Cowgirl's Train Set.
Now, who's the group?
The group is called Cowgirl's Train Set. We've heard a couple of their songs before.
We have. They're good.
We have. They're really good. I felt like it was a time for another one.
Fantastic.
Try to get these guys back as soon as possible.
One of my favorite parts of the program is the great musicians and local music and interesting off-center music that you often bring to the program.
Well, it is medicine for the soul.
That's right.
Cowgirl Train Set has played here locally, too, right?
They have been to Eureka Springs once, and they fell in love with it. I hope they come back. They're incredible human beings. And, well, that's how I feel about everybody I introduce you all to. Really what I want everybody to do is come out to the show and see for yourself, because secondhand account of an experience is through my eyes only. You're not getting any of the crowd energy. I mean, just, you got to come out to the show. I say this every week. Pick up your local magazine. Check out a music calendar. It's very important to come out. When there's so many negative things happening in the world, why would you not want to treat yourself to some nice, positive energy?
Yeah, the boss and I watched Easy Rider the other night, and the soundtrack started off with a Seals and Crofts song, an old song, and then Steppenwolf and some of those. And you know what? Here it is, more than 40 years later, I'm still listening to the same stuff. Isn't that astonishing?
Yeah, and it probably gives you the same feeling inside, the nostalgic feeling that it did. Yeah.
Well, and Tracy, since you've come on board, you've supplied the soundtrack for our lives, and I appreciate it.
Well, before we hear from Jeremiah Alvarado, can we do a commercial for Mountain Bird Coffee and Tea Company? I mean, you're drinking Mountain Bird coffee, so how is it?
Personally, I am tickled to death that not just to get to drink this wonderful coffee, it is special, but to know that it's roasted right here in Carroll County.
That's right, up in Holiday Island.
In Holiday Island, Mr. Steve Gassaway, who, after many years in business, economic times, reinvented himself, and he thought, what do I like to do? I like to roast coffee. And he's turned that into a wonderful business and a great product, and can't say enough good things about it.
Good. All right. Thanks much to Mountain Bird Coffee and Tea Company for keeping us supplied here at the Ozark Radio Hour.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in Berryville, you can buy some of the Mountain Bird coffee at the Painter's Palette on the town square. Now here's Jeremiah Alvarado.
Hello everyone, this is Jeremiah Alvarado with The Third Side of the Coin, and I think that everyone who has listened to The Third Side of the Coin over these past few weeks understands my disdain towards City Council lately over the City CUP issue. And I'm really not sure that the people on City Council really understand the gravity of what they've pulled. And this week, Becky Gillette wrote a very excellent story on the B&B cap and moratorium, and the reason I say that council doesn't seem to understand the gravity of their own misgivings is a quote I'm going to pull from James DeVito when he was talking about the bad feelings generated from CUPs being controversial. Quote, "It is too contentious, and we don't need to put ourselves through this. If we were to cap at the level at which we have now, we don't have to worry about parking and other issues. It simplifies the matter. It takes all the drama out of it. It takes away all the heated arguments. People who volunteer on planning shouldn't be treated in such a manner. Continue doing what we are doing doesn't benefit anyone and puts the commissioners through the ringer, and there is no reason for that." End quote. Now, I agree with James DeVito. I agree that planning should not be put through the ringer, and it's putting blame where blame should not be put. City Council, on the other hand, really should be put through some kind of ringer, and I'm really disappointed that they haven't. I love that DeVito seems to think that putting a cap on CUPs, and B&Bs in this case, more specifically, is going to magically take away the heated arguments when it is not the number of B&Bs that the arguments are stemming from, but the ignorance that council has shown towards the 200-foot rule and their own laws. I cannot express my frustration enough that has come over these past few weeks towards our city council and the multiple commissions in town, and I feel bad that the planning commission has to take the heat for what city council has done. City Council put Planning Commission into a corner, and we all know it. And now they expect people to idly sit back and respect City Council's decisions. Someone asked me recently what I was smoking, and I want to reply with, it's not what I smoke, it's what I drink. And whatever I drink is making pretty bloody clear that something is wrong with City Council's plans. And a concern that has come from this is what happens to the quote-unquote tourist lodgings. Council decided that tourist lodgings didn't have a good enough definition for them to adequately control. And now there is a B&B moratorium and possible cap. But does that affect tourist lodgings? Can planning still issue a CUP for a tourist lodging as long as that tourist lodging is not a B&B? It's a question probably best answered by planning, but it concerns me that instead of stopping CUPs, the moratorium is only stopping B&Bs, of which their definition no one in their bloody right mind seems to know, because we can't figure out the definition of breakfast. Now, coming away from my disdain, I want to talk about that sensation sweeping the multiple nations of the world, and that is Pokemon Go. And for those who don't know what Pokemon is, they're small fantasy creatures that players known as trainers catch and befriend. And Pokemon Go has taken that and turned it into a virtual reality game where people can walk around their hometowns and catch and train Pokemon. Jacqueline Wolven with the ESDN has joined up with the hype to help make downtown Eureka Springs the place to go. And believe me, this is not a press release for them. Now, when I first heard about this, I'll admit to sighing to myself from both shock and slight disappointment. And the disappointment came from the gamer side of me. I was concerned with this whole issue due to, in the past, when other groups or commissions, specifically in this town, but other places too, have wanted to jump onto a hype train, bandwagon, or other such event, they would spend so much time talking about it that they either miss their opportunity or they talk about it in such a way that anyone can tell that they don't know much about it. And the gaming culture is still kind of in this rut of being stigmatized as being inherently bad, which was another reason why I really wasn't sure that ESDN would know what was really going on. I'm happy to say, though, those fears have been mitigated and gotten rid of. So to list off, for those of you who play Pokemon Go out there, to list off what's happening in downtown Eureka. Now, our city's downtown area has the highest density for Pokestops for a downtown area in Arkansas. And so with that, there will begin to be lure events being held in Basin Park, along with a phone charging station in Basin Park. And now the different stores around the downtown area now know what you're doing with your cell phone a little more clearly. And as always, be careful and please watch where you walk. Do not walk into the street. And speaking of walking into the street, if there's one thing that really brings out the frustration about the hype from this video game, that is the horror stories the media oh so loves to cling to. One thing that the media loves to do is not blame people for what they do, but the game or the app that they were using. I just want to say from a gamer to everyone out there, please, ponder and scrutinize what the media says about this game. The media loves to stigmatize video games as inherently bad, and they're really not. The media has been enjoying the influx of horror stories of people trespassing on property, quote-unquote, because of the game, and robbing people with the game. And that is not the game's fault. Saying it is the game's fault that someone robbed another is like saying that it is the hammer's fault for being the tool to bash in someone's skull. It doesn't make sense. Now, this has been Jeremiah Alvarado with the third side of the coin, heading out to drink my 5th Dr. Pepper, and I wish all of you a wonderful week.
Well, thank you, Jeremiah. It's so great to have you on the program and an investigative reporter telling us what's going on with our government or lack of it here in the county. Thank you so much.
I have to say this whole idea of walking around the hills and streets of Eureka Springs, staring at your telephone, playing a game, this Pokemon Go. I mean, you stand a good chance of getting killed, don't you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
On a normal day, you'll get killed by a local, but on a busy weekend, we have a lot of people in this town that are just completely mesmerized by the scenery.
All right.
Well,
we'll have Jeremiah on the program next Friday, and he can tell us all about this Pokemon Go. Now, let's hear from Ken Trimble about our pollinators. Ken Trimble is a longtime Eureka Springs businessman and one of the principals who helped the city of Eureka Springs become a bee city. Ken is also an integral part of the Eureka Springs Pollinator Alliance. Ken, welcome to Ozark Radio Hour.
Thanks, Dan. It's great.
I want to talk about Bee City USA and about the Pollinator Alliance, but before we get into that, who is Ken Trimble? And what is your business?
Well, I've lived here 44 years.
My goodness.
Yeah. So like 2/3 of my life has been in Eureka Springs. My parents moved here in the Chicago area, and I came down here when I was 21.
All right.
I went through doing carpentry and survival skills, learning sheetrock and trying to make a living and not have to move away like so many people had to do. And I kind of slipped into kind of what I do today through working up at the Crescent Hotel, and I was chief of maintenance up there for 9 years.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of learned working with ice machines and air conditioning, mainly out of a need. And so anyway, I kind of slipped into the back door of air conditioning and heating and commercial refrigeration that I do today. I also have some property west of town and some acreage. And when I get to spend some time out there, we have gardening, and we used to have horses. We don't anymore, but we still keep chickens. And so I'm kind of a rural guy at heart, but I work in town. Okay. For the most part.
Well, your story sounds like one I hear frequently. It sounds like Ken Trimble was once a wild child and came here to sort of go back to the earth.
I was kind of the back to the land type person, For a while, I worked down at Arkansas Primitives, and we built barnwood furniture, and that was really interesting, interesting time when the train, before the days of the train, came back to Eureka, and the Dorches kind of restarted that again. So that was kind of a whole different chapter.
All right. Well, let me switch gears and congratulate you, first of all, on what you guys have done to make Eureka Springs a bee city. What does that mean? Tell folks what a bee city is.
Well, Bee City USA is a national organization that I kind of became aware of a couple of years ago. I've been a beekeeper for about 9 years. And I just thought that the concept of a sustainable bee population and promoting a sustainable bee population was critically important all across North America and across the world. 85% of all the flowering plants rely upon some kind of a pollinator, primarily insect pollinators, but also bats and, of course, the butterflies in addition to the bees. But I became aware of the Bee City USA, and it just sounded like a concept that would fit in Eureka real well. Eureka being real big with their parks. We have a great park system. And so many people, who came here to be back to the landers. Right. And it's just such a beautiful area that, and all the flowers that we have in the springs and the water, the clean water. And all these things basically tie back into having a healthy pollinator population, because without clean water and without pesticide-free plants, you really can't have a healthy bee population. You can't have a healthy butterfly population. And ultimately, it becomes a matter of, are we going to have a healthy people population?
Right.
And so the Bee City USA is about sustainability and reducing the use of pesticides and getting back to native cultivars, native flowers that the bees and the pollinators evolved with.
Several years ago, I started a community garden with the church I go to, and also am a home gardener. We have lots of fruit trees in our home, apple and pear and plum and peach and so on. And I really noticed a decrease in the number of pollinators. I mean, there's been a dramatic decrease in the last few years. This year it seems particularly noticeable to me because our fruit trees and our gardens and so on aren't being adequately pollinated. And I wonder is this just my imagination, or is there a dramatic decrease in the number of pollinating insects around?
No, it's a real thing. The populations, we have over 4,000 species of bees in North America. Every year we lose, of the bees we know the most, of course, the honeybees. They've certainly they're the poster child of all the bees. They've been most studied, and every year we've been losing over 30%. For the last, since the colony collapse disorder started back around 2006, somewhere in there. The last 2 years, we've been over 40% of losses of managed hives. Here in the United States, they do a survey every year, and it's gone from 42 the previous year to 44 this past year. I understand the monarch population is down 80%. Across North America. So, no, it's a very real situation, and that's exactly what got me into beekeeping. I'm not by nature, I didn't really care that much for the concept of being around bees. I'm not drawn to bees naturally, but I've learned to love them a lot. But no, it's a very real issue. That's why I got involved.
The Eureka Springs Pollinator Alliance, the purpose of that group is public education and promotion of pollinator environments.
Exactly. Yeah, we're kind of the local arm of promoting Bee City USA, but our main thrust is education. We'd like to I think people want to do the right thing. I think a lot of people don't know really how to go forward. They just somehow feel either paralyzed or, that whatever they've done in the past is good enough. But we've discovered a lot of things about some of the pesticides that we use today, and even some of the plants that we buy, being treated. So a lot of times it's totally innocent that we, pick up on plants and we think we're doing a good thing, only to find out that those plants have been treated with systemic pesticides that are actually doing damage to our pollinators. We're definitely involved in the education of people. We're promoters of Bee City USA. We're going to be getting out some street signage, displaying the fact that we are, to people who come here, and hopefully do a little more advertising for that idea. We're just kind of big promoters of, healthy gardens, pesticide-free, trying to bring back pollinators.
Strictly as an individual who has some small-time gardening interests, what can I do to make my yard and my garden a friendlier environment for pollinators?
There's things that you can do, and there's things that simply by taking more of a hands-off approach that you can do. And number one, of course, you can plant flowers that are pollinator friendly. And we're going to be putting together some lists for people. And that in saying that, it's important that people realize that there needs to be a continuation of flowers through the season. You can think of it in terms of you put out flowers, for the spring, and then come along the heat of the summer, and those flowers aren't producing nectar and pollen, which are the nutritional sources for the bees and butterflies in the area. So it has to be a continuation of flowers progressing through the seasons So
gardeners should sort of stagger their planting.
Exactly. That's really important. And also some things that you can do by almost taking more of a hands-off approach is don't mow quite so much. Let the dandelions and the clover kind of do their thing. Those are two extremely nutritional pollinator sources that are pretty much occurring, all around us if we just kind of allow it.
So if we have clover in our yards, we should let it flower?
It's best to let it flower. We just tell people, you might think about maybe setting your mower a couple of notches higher than you normally do, and let those low ground growing plants, the clovers and the dandelions, do their thing.
The emphasis of the pollinator group, it's the Pollinator Alliance, sounds like it is very local and focused on Carroll County, Eureka Springs, Berryville, hopefully. Are you concerned about some of the industrial farming practices outside of our area? For example, the big rice production or corn and soybean production to the north and south.
Certainly that all impacts us in some sense. We're fortunate in the fact that we don't have that type of thing real close by, but ultimately the Roundups and the pesticides and herbicides that are used end up in the water table. So we're all basically drinking out of the same tap to a certain degree, and to see that going on nationally is certainly going to impact our lifestyle, and hopefully some of the programs that are going on besides the Bee City USA, there's tremendous national groups, and also President Obama and his act to bring pollinators back that he brought out last year, and there's some interesting things going on at the United States Department of Agriculture, and they're forming an alliance with some of the honey producing and beekeeping associations in the United States, which is hopefully going to be a good thing. And usually anytime there's dialogue and information exchanged, it hopefully will lead to an improvement. But yeah, we're definitely concerned about that. And the Eureka Springs Pollinator Alliance, ultimately, we hope will begin to encompass the surrounding area around us. We hope to have some dialogue and hopefully impact with the highway departments, some of the utility companies with their right-of-ways. We hope to see them allowing more pollinator-friendly plantings going on. Here locally, we have real good support with Justin Huss, who's come on with the Eureka Springs Parks and Recreation Commission. We have a great new gardener in town. She's very much into native pollinators and native plants. We hope to get some bee habitats established around the area, hopefully at Lake Leatherwood. We'll be putting out some what they call bee hotels, which
that's great.
which supports the native pollinators, orchard mason bees. Going back to your what you said about having fruit trees in your yard, what you can do yourself would be to get some reeds, some cane or bamboo. Preferably you like the smaller stuff that's got about a 3/8 inch bore in it, and cut about 8 or 9 inch lengths of that and kind of bundle them up and put them in kind of a sheltered area. And the mason bees, the orchard mason bees, are tremendous pollinators, and they will make nesting sites with those. And we hope to do something like that on kind of a hopefully a real demonstration scale down at Lake Leatherwood. We're going to try to work that out with Parks.
Wonderful.
To see if we can do that.
How can people get in touch with the Eureka Springs Pollinator Alliance?
Well, I'm glad you asked. As of right now, we have a Facebook page. So you can go to, on your Facebook, Eureka Springs Pollinator Alliance, and you can like us on Facebook. Of course, you can contact me personally if you like. That my name and number is on that or on that Facebook page. But I'd be happy to talk to anybody locally about it. We try to meet. Right now, we've been meeting usually on like a every other week basis down at the library annex. The Eureka Springs Carnegie Library Annex has been good enough to let us use that great facility down there. And we've been meeting for a couple every other week since about the beginning of June, and those meetings are open. And we try to put that up on our Facebook page when those meetings are going to take place, but usually they're around 6 o'clock in the evening.
Okay.
And we welcome anybody that's just got even just an interest in knowing more. Particularly people who are gardeners are certainly welcome. We have several beekeepers, lots of people who are gardeners. Some people who are just plain interested and just want to know more.
All right.
So come one, come all.
All right. The Eureka Springs Pollinator Alliance on Facebook.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ken Trimble, thank you so much for being with us today on the Ozark Radio Hour.
Thank you, Dan. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you again for organizing this, and I hope that I can get you, Ken, and the rest of the folks out to Blue Elk Farm and take a look at our bees, and let me know whether I can do any better. I seem to lose a hive or two every single year.
Yeah, and please take Ken up on his offer to become involved in the Eureka Springs Pollinator Alliance. Go to Facebook and like the organization and support them in any way you can.
And what is that again, Dan? The Eureka Springs Pollinator Alliance?
Yes,
is that correct?
Eureka Springs Pollinator Alliance. And now it's time for Sharon Laborde. Welcome to the conversation and an interview with longtime Eureka Springs resident Loretta Crenshaw.
Welcome to the conversation. This is Sharon Laborde. I'm visiting today with Loretta Crenshaw, head librarian of the Eureka Springs Library. Thank you for joining me today, Loretta.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks for asking me.
I'm so glad to see you. As you may know, we at the Ozark Radio Hour are interested in everyone's story, and everyone in Eureka Springs and in the Ozarks has a special story to tell. And we are collecting an oral history of our town and our community. And we're just so curious about, since you're not a native, you weren't born here, correct?
No, I was not.
Okay. Well, we're curious about what brought you to Eureka Springs.
Well, my mother, I couldn't answer it any more simply than that. My mother, she has a lot of names. Pat Farrar Barnett Milam, who passed away about 4 years ago. She was going by Pat Barnett then. That was my last name as well. And she and my dad had divorced when I was 3. We lived in Austin, Texas. And she just felt like Austin was getting too big. Mm-hmm. And we happened to come up here on a camping vacation the summer of 1974. And she just fell in love with Eureka Springs, like people do, and just decided, we're going to move up there. So we packed everything up and came up here in the fall, in September of 74. And I was 9 at the time.
Okay.
And we lived on Pine Street, 13 Pine, that we rented. And
that's that one-way street.
Yes, the one-way street, yes. And I was scared of everything, and my bedroom was upstairs. Both of our bedrooms were upstairs, yes. And that was the first time I'd really seen snow. We had a great snow that Thanksgiving and Christmas, and so that was really exciting for me. And I attended Clear Spring School, and it was the first year it was open. At the time, there were 10 kids in it, and I was the oldest at that time. I believe it was probably later that year, maybe Rain Equine was we were friends also, and I think she started going there. She's a little bit older than I am, but not much. So I did go there with Will and Laurie Fulton.
And did you just love that school?
I did. I really did. I had, they taught me fractions, and it was like, that was an impossible thing for me, and they taught it very well. And we read, they read aloud the Odyssey to us, and then we put on a little play that we didn't have a script for. We were just, ad-libbing the whole story. And I got to be Penelope, which was wonderful, of course, because I was the oldest. And what else was there? I guess I should have asked for Athena or something, but I don't think Athena was in that. Anyway, but it was really fun, and I walked to school most days from my house. Mm-hmm. It was in the...
You felt like this was a safe place.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I've heard that before from people, single women with children, or just single women, say that they feel
safe.
They feel comfortable here. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what because there are other small towns that you might not feel it, but there's just something about Eureka Springs.
There is something. I walked everywhere, and which I know kids now do as well.
Mm-hmm.
And because Rain lived up on Vaughn Street, and so there was a path that came out of Basin Park, on the edge of Basin Park, and it would go up behind the house, and it wound up, I guess, at the end of Vaughn Street. I guess it dead ends or something. But I walked to school. The school was in the Harmon Park building now, the old log cabin. That's where it was at the time. And Will and Laurie Fulton lived in that house right in the curve going up East Mountain where the mirror is. They lived there. And I was in love with their little daughter, Rachel. I just thought she was I wanted to, take her home with me. I was at the right age for that. 10-year-old, I was really into them. But Mom worked at the Crescent Hotel and cooked with Crescent Dragon Wagon, who was, I guess, in charge of the kitchen, maybe.
Really?
At the time, I don't remember, but she was working in the kitchen at the Crescent Hotel.
I bet your mom was a great cook.
She was a good cook. It's funny, I never really spent much time. I was afraid of the hotel as a child because I, heard the ghost stories, so I wasn't very anxious to go in there.
I don't blame you.
But yes, I do. I remember that. And in those days, the Quiet Night, I think it was the Quiet Night, was down where the La Stick is now, in the basement of the New Orleans Hotel.
And that is
that
a place
was the place.
That was the place.
It was
in
the happening
70s.
place. Yes, and at that time, she took me everywhere with her, so I would go to the bar with her too. I know you couldn't do that these days, but I remember being down there and the cigarette smoke being so thick because everybody was smoking cigarettes that I would go up at the top of the staircase and just lie down right next to the door so that fresh air would come under the door, and I would just wait for
wait
to go home.
Oh.
But that was fun. It was. I always loved that.
I've heard lots of stories about the Quiet Night, and
I've seen some photos. I think that Vern Tucker.
So when you got to high school age, were you?
Well, I only lived here for a year.
Oh, I see.
And we moved away after that. Mom stayed. Let's see. Let me back up a little bit. Toward the end of that school year. We moved out of the house on Pine Street, and we moved into a teepee, actually next to a teepee. I believe it belonged to Ann Armstrong, if I have this right. And I think it might. I'm not sure whose property it was on, but it was a huge, like a 40-foot wide teepee.
Oh, my.
And a lot of people lived out there, but we had our own tent. Mom went to the Army surplus store and bought an Army tent. She got slabs from the sawmill and put sand down and put the curved side down, and we had a floor and we had our beds in there, but we bathed in the creek, and it was something. Everyone was a vegetarian, and Mom was getting pretty strict with that, and I was not very happy about that at all. Not at all. So that summer, I went to visit my dad in Texas and my grandmother, and I stayed there for the next school year, and I didn't. And then in the meanwhile, she moved out of Eureka Springs after that.
I see.
To Izard County.
I see.
Yes. So it was just the year that we were there. That we were here. My Aunt Jude had moved back over here too when she had her son with Jimmy Blackfeather, was her husband. And so we still had a lot of ties. We came back and forth a lot, knew a lot of people, and then they moved back over here. The family moved back when I was in college.
I see.
So I've been coming back again.
So really your stay in Eureka up until you were an adult was just an infrequent.
It was. I just lived here for a year, and like I said, we moved to Izard County, and then I moved back here in 2002.
But these memories are so vivid.
They are very vivid.
It must have been a happy experience.
It was very happy. I remember like our first Christmas. We didn't have a lot of money, and the first Christmas here, but the fact that it snowed was just like magic. It was wonderful.
I bet.
And you don't always get snow on Christmas, but I was very lucky to get it that year.
No, that's right.
Yeah, and everything came from a thrift store, a dresser that she repainted for me and some different things like that, but I remember it very well.
Well, when you lived in the tent,
Mm-hmm.
Was it kind of a commune type
It was.
experience?
Absolutely, it was. Like I said, we had our own tent, but a lot of people lived in the teepee together, and there was a communal kitchen, and everybody cooked together.
I see.
I remember I think that was the year the Rainbow family. Do you know about the Rainbow family?
I remember that.
Yeah, they came through and they stayed out there for a while.
Now, where was that?
We're going to have to ask Ann about that. I believe it was actually on the other side of the river. No, it wasn't. I believe it was on the other side of the Kings River, just the other side, off of 142 that goes. There's a Baptist church right there. I think, if I remember what Mom told me, that it was in that area somewhere. I don't know exactly. I should pin that down as part of my history.
Yes.
I need that.
Yes, you need that little
I need to know.
snippet, right? So you went off to college, and did you major in library science?
I majored in psychology.
Did you?
Yes. I have a master's in psychology as well.
After college, you returned.
Yes, I moved to Memphis to go to graduate school and lived there for 14 years. And then I met Glenn, and he was ready to change his job, and I didn't even suggest moving here. It was his idea. I was really surprised that he wanted to move here, and he said, I want to try real estate, and I didn't know what I was going to do,
right.
But there was a part-time job after about a year open at the library, and I applied for that, and I just said, oh, this is what I was supposed to be doing all this time. But I'm glad it was here and not,
You have no regrets.
No, I do not. I really don't.
And it sounds like you did have a wonderful childhood experience in Eureka Springs.
I did. It was really fun.
I imagine a lot of kids during that particular time period had a very free, carefree existence.
Yes.
I remember the philosophy of child rearing back then.
Yes.
Which was let them do what they do.
Exactly.
Let them express themselves and do what they want to do.
Right.
Do you agree with that now?
I agree. Actually, I was the kind of kid that really wanted structure. So it was kind of hard. I think that's why I'm such a worrier, because I was like, well, I don't know if this is the right decision to make, and I have to second guess every decision I make, because it was always left to me to make decisions.
I see.
So it's just, and I think every generation is kind of, a pendulum swing from the previous.
I think so too.
And so
I think so too.
Who knows what the right.
But we live in a little protected area here where children can go out and play outdoors.
Yes.
So many people that I have spoken with lately with young children, their kids are so structured into such a structured existence with lessons and games and team play and that, because they're afraid to let them go outside and play like we did when we were
just
young.
sit and read. I mean, I'm not a huge outdoors person, but I just love to read, and so that's what I did as much as I could.
We love having you here.
Well, thank you.
Our librarian.
Thank you
we
very
really
much.
do, and it's been a lot of fun. I think I've asked you just about everything I wanted to talk about today. So as I said, it's been wonderful talking with Loretta today, and we appreciate your personal experiences and reflections. And to our audience, thank you for listening to our podcast. We'll be back next week with more Ozark stories. Until then, this is Sharon Laborde, cultural editor of Ozark Radio Hour.
Wow, I did not know that. What is this Clear Springs School that Loretta speaks of?
I'm not sure I have a clear understanding of it, but back in the 70s, folks kind of enamored, I think, with a man named Neil, who wrote a book about a school he founded, Summerhill. And it was a school where kids were free to kind of run about and discover their own interests. And we still have Clear Spring School with us today. Well, Tracy, do you want to introduce the Cowgirl train set for us?
Sure. This is Cowgirl's train set, and you can check them out on Facebook if you like what you're hearing and you want to learn more about them, or cowgirlstrainset.com.
Seen the stars in the sky, watch the hills and trees unfurled. Felt the wind on my face, seen all the colors of the world. But I don't wanna tell a lie this time, or rearrange the stories inside. Think of all the places we could run and hide. I don't wanna tell a lie this time, 'cause all I need is right before my eyes. Got nothing left to do, nothing left to find. My feet in the grass and wiggle toes in the mud. Ran out into a storm and caught a million lightning bugs. But I don't wanna tell a lie this time, or rearrange the stories inside. Think of all the places we could run and hide. I don't wanna tell a lie this time, 'cause all I need is right before my eyes. Got nothing left to do, nothing left to find. Feet in the grass, wiggle toes in the mud. Ran out into a storm and caught a million lightning bugs. But I don't wanna tell a lie this time, rearrange the stories inside. Think of all the places we could run and hide. I don't wanna tell a lie this time, 'cause all I need is right before my eyes. Got nothing left to do, nothing left to find.
Well, how's that, fellas? Are we all finished?
Well, I think that's about it, and I think we should say goodbye. So, folks, again, thanks for tuning in to the Ozark Radio Hour, and until next week, adios.
Happy trails and safe travels.
The Ozark Harvest Radio Hour is a production of the Eureka Springs Independent and the Inside Straight and Thanatopsis Club. Richard Pille, executive producer. Dan Croats, producer and writer. Dr. Sharon Sloan, technical director. Dr. Fred Mayer, Director of Music, G.K. Chesterton, Director of Philosophy and Content, Jane Pille and Bonifaci Fiacre, Gardening Consultants, Luca Brazzi, Aquaculture Consultant, Eddie Keever and the Fabulous Keever Sisters, Advertising and Sales. The Ozark Harvest Radio Hour is organic radio, always fresh, always local, and always honest. We are community radio. That means that if you would like to appear on the Ozark Harvest Radio Hour, we have to put you on. Contact us at the OzarkHarvestRadioHour.com, like us on Facebook, or look us up in the telephone book. Until next week, so long and be nice.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.